Okay, class, we're picking up where we left off at on this problem here, problem D. Now, we got here where we found the greatest common factor, which was 50, and also that with the variables, we ended up with y squared. So our greatest common factor was 50y squared. Now, we go here. We divide each one of these terms by 50y squared. So we have 100 divided by 50, which is 2. Y to the fifth divided by y to the second, we know is y to the third. This would be minus 50 divided by 50, we know is 1. Y to the third divided by y to the second would just leave us y to the first, or just y. 100 divided by 50, we know is 2. And these y squared simplify out. So I did put this parenthesis a little too far away, but that could be easily corrected. So this here is our final answer. Okay, now we scroll down here. Now we come to objective 3. Factor out the negative of the greatest common factor of a polynomial. Factor in when the leading coefficient is negative. When the leading coefficient of a polynomial is negative, we first factor out the opposite of the greatest common factor, or GCF. And that's basically saying factor out the negative. So first thing we have here is 5, negative 5, and 45. Now when we do our factors, we do not have to include the negative right now. So we do the factors of 5, which we know is 1 and 5. The factors of 45 is 1, 3, 5, 15, and also 45. Now the greatest common factor of 5 and 45, we know is 5. Okay, so we'll write down our 5. Now we look at our x's. We have an x cubed and an x squared. Both term has an x, so we take the x with the lowest exponent, which would be x squared. Now, since our lead coefficient was negative, then we will write our negative here. So it'll be a negative 5x squared. Now, we have to find out what we're going to put inside the parenthesis. Again, we would take this negative 5x cubed plus 45x squared, and we would divide each term by what we factored out, which is a negative 5x squared. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. X cubed divided by x squared leaves you x. Now, we have a positive 45 divided by a negative 5. 45 divided by negative 5 would give us a minus 9. And this x squared and x squared would simplify out. So our final answer here, again, I wrote this parenthesis out a little too far, but our final answer here is negative 5x squared times the parenthesis of x minus 9. Now we go here to B. We can go off to the side here. We'll take the factors of 4 and the factors of 6. 4 is 1, 2, and 4. And the factors of 6 is 1, 2, 3, and 6. So we see here that the greatest common factor of 4 and 6 is 2. Now we look here at these variables. Both of them has an a, both of them has a b. So we take the a that has the lowest exponent and the b that has the lowest exponent. And it happens that both of them have an exponent of 1. So it'll be 2ab. Now, since our lead coefficient was negative, we'll put our negative sign in front. Now we have our parenthesis. I'm going to put that last parenthesis after I write out the last number. So we had negative 4a cubed b squared plus 6ab. And we'll divide each term by negative 2ab. So we have a negative 4 divided by a negative 2. I mean a positive 2. Well, actually it's supposed to be negative 2. It disappeared. So our answer here so far, we have 2. So that'll be positive 2. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. We have a cubed divided by a. which we know is a to the second power. B squared divided by b would just give us b. Now, a positive 6 divided by a negative 2 will give us a minus 3. These variables simplify out. So this here is our final answer. So we have negative 2ab times the parenthesis of 2a squared b minus 3. Now we scroll down here to objective 4. It says factor by grouping. Now we have factor ax plus 5x. Now, what we're going to do here, we know that a and 5 has nothing in common, but we know that these x's do. So we factor out this x, and then in parentheses, we know we're really taking ax plus 5x and dividing both of these by x. These x's simplify out and leave you a. These x's simplify out and leave you plus 5. So that is the factor. Okay, it says now factor. Now, what we have here, this looks a little different than what we covered before. But watch this. This is actually very, very easy to do. The first thing we do is look and see if we have parentheses that are the same. We do. We have b plus 3 and b plus 3. Now you notice that these two are separated by the addition sign. So this is one term and this is another term. When both of these terms have something in common here, and I'm talking about the parentheses, you will write down just one of the parentheses, one of the matching parentheses. So we have b plus 3. Okay, now we will have another parenthesis. That other parenthesis would be everything else that's on the outside of those two matching parentheses. So in the other parenthesis, we'll have a plus 5. And it doesn't matter which one you write first. So our final answer here is a plus 5 times the parenthesis b plus 3. Now we go down here. Now, as a matter of fact, let me go back up here because I want us to stay consistent. Remember how I told you when we factor out the greatest common factor, how we would divide each term? Let's do that. Now, we factored out the b plus 3. So this is really a times b plus 3 plus 5 times b plus 3. Now, we were supposed to divide out b plus 3 because that's what we factored out. Now, and I'll put them in parentheses again. These b plus 3s simplify out, which left us an a, which we have here. These b plus 3s simplify out, and that leaves us a 5, which we have here, and we put in parentheses. See, this still works. Now we come down here to example 3a. Now, the first thing we notice, this is our first term, this is our second term. Both terms have 7m plus 2 in common, so we bring down a 7m plus 2. Now, everything that's left on the outside, we can write that in its own parenthesis. We add 3x plus 5y, and we're done. Now, we look here at b. Now, we have our two terms here. So we write down the repeating parenthesis, which is 4b minus 9. And then in our next parenthesis is everything that's left, which is a squared minus 2. And we're done. Now we scroll down here. We have factor by grouping. It says for a polynomial with 4 terms, we factor by grouping if it can be done by split the 4 terms into 2 sets of 2 terms, factor the GCF out of each pair of terms, and factor out the common binomial, which we're going to practice here. So we look here at A. We group the first 2 terms. We want to separate these into 2 sets. This would be set 1, and I'm going to circle set 2. Okay, set 1, x squared and 2x. We know these coefficients only have 1 in common, which we don't have to write. But the x squared and the x, we know we can factor out an x. Now we could go off to the side here. X squared plus 2x. We'll divide both of these by x. And in our parenthesis, we will have an x, and then 2x divided by x will leave you a positive 2. So that took care of the first set. Now we come to the second set, 4x and 8. You notice they don't both of them do not have an x, so we do not factor out an x. But we notice 4 and 8. We've already did the greatest common factor of 4 and 8, and we know that it was 4. But since this first coefficient is positive, what we factor out is a positive 4. Now, we would take these two terms, the 4x and the 8, and divide both by 4. These 4 simplify out, and that will leave you x. And then 8 divided by 4 is a positive 2. Now you notice here, like the other problems we've had earlier, these two parentheses match up, so you'll write it once. So you have x plus 2, and then everything that's left, we will put in the second parenthesis, which is x plus 4. And we're done with this problem. Now we come here to B. Remember, we grouped the first set, we grouped the last set. Now with this first set here, we already did the greatest common factor of 5 and 15, which we know was 5. And the greatest common factor of x cubed and x squared, we know is x squared. Now we have to find our parenthesis here. Now we can go off to the side again. We have 5x cubed minus 15x squared, and we divide each of them by 5x squared. These 5 simplify out. X cubed divided by x squared is x. Minus 15 divided by 5 will give you a minus 3. And these x squareds will simplify out. Now we come here to the second two terms. We have a positive 2x and 6. We know we will not be able to factor out a variable. But 2 and 6, we know the greatest common factor is a positive 2. Now we go off to the side here. 2x minus 6, we divide both of these terms by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and we're left with x. So x will go inside this parenthesis. A minus 6 divided by 2 will give you a minus 3. We had two parentheses that match up. We'll write one of them. And then in our second parenthesis, we will write what's left, which is 5x squared plus 2. Now that's it for B. Okay, class, finishing off this section, I already took the liberty of showing the work here. First of all, we have C. We have these first two terms, 3a minus 3b. They both have 3 in common because we know the greatest common factor of 3 and 3 is 3. So we factor out our 3. So we take both of these terms, 3a minus 3b, and divide them by 3. These 3 simplify out, and in parentheses, you're left with a minus b. Now with our second two terms. Now, this term is a little unique because with our second two terms, we start off with a negative lead coefficient. So whatever we factor out must be negative. Now we know A and B has nothing in common except 1, but x and x does. So the only thing we can factor out here is an x, and we will make it negative. So it'll be negative x. So off here to the side, we divide both of these terms by negative x. Negative divided by negative is positive, and these x's simplify out, and they leave you a. Now a positive divided by a negative will give you this minus here, and then these x's will simplify out and leave you b. So now we have two parentheses that match up, which is a minus b, and in the second parenthesis we add 3 minus x. And that's the final answer for C. Now for D, we factor this out. We've already did the greatest common factor, 12 and 21. We did that previously, and the greatest common factor was 3. The greatest common factor of the variables is x cubed. And then we went over here and simplified. 12 divided by 3 is 4. X to the 5th divided by x to the 3rd is x squared. Minus 21 over 3 will give us a minus 7, and these x cubed simplify out. Now 4x squared and minus 7 has nothing in common except for positive 1. So we factor out a positive 1, and we're left with 4x squared minus 7. And you notice these two parentheses match up, and then we put what's on the outside, 3x cubed plus 1, and that is our final answer.